Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's Friday, so let's get this show started. Oh, that's the garage door opener. Dummy. And we begin at the United Nations, where once again the United States was the lone veto against a proposal to end the genocide in Gaza. The resolution was considered in the UN Security Council, where the U.S. is one of the members with a veto power. The measure would have demanded an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, and the removal of all restrictions on human aid into the enclave. 14 out of 15 members of the Security Council supported the resolution. The Trump administration official tried to justify the veto, claiming the resolution failed to, quote, condemn Hamas or recognize Israel's right to defend itself. I think we're way beyond that. Masses of Palestinians are currently fleeing south in the enclave as the Israeli military pushes into Gaza City. Israel also bombed Lebanon in violation of a ceasefire deal it agreed to with Hezbollah last year. President Trump was in the United Kingdom and was asked by a reporter if he will ever apply pressure to stop Netanyahu's genocide in Gaza. Trump responded with long debunked lies about October 7th.
Mr. President, you uniquely, you alone in the whole world, have the power to persuade Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop the demolition of Gaza City, to stop the starvation of Palestine, and to stop the killing of civilians. If not now, when will you exercise that power and tell him to stop?
Sure.
And then for both of you...
But you do understand about October 7th.
You do understand. So believe me, I understand.
One of the worst days in the history of humanity. What happened, I have seen the tapes. Babies that are 4 months old and just chopped up to pieces.
Yeah, that didn't happen. But if your cause is stopping the mutilation of babies, then you'd support a ceasefire in Gaza, because the Israeli military has butchered literally thousands of babies. Next up, the forced national mourning of a dead fascist continues. Senate Democrats helped Republicans unanimously pass a resolution Thursday to honor right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. The legislation claims Kirk held a, quote, commitment to the constitutional principles of civil discussion and debate between all people in the United States, regardless of political affiliation. Civil discussion and debate, which is not really what Kirk engaged in actually, are not constitutional principles. Due process and free speech are constitutional principles, things that Kirk opposed for minorities, immigrants, and pro-Palestinian students. The resolution also honored Kirk's public service and established October 14th, which was Kirk's birthday, as a national day of remembrance for him. Again, Democrats in the Senate did not oppose this, and House Democratic leadership announced it would not oppose a similar resolution soon to be voted on in the House. Hakeem Jeffries proving once again he's somehow an even worse Democratic leader than Nancy Pelosi. The more inches Democrats give this crusade, the more miles the right will take. In the wake of Kirk's killing, the president has issued a threat to all liberal and left organizations. He's declared Antifa a terrorist organization. He had Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air and is threatening other critics on TV. And next, the administration is preparing to criminalize being transgender. According to reporter Ken Klippenstein, 2 national security sources told him the White House is considering designating transgender Americans as extremists. Quote, the senior official explains that there is no process per se for dealing with trans people as a threat group, but feels that trans individuals will be increasingly targeted under the banner of violent extremism. Under the plan being discussed, the FBI would treat transgender suspects as the subset of the Bureau's new threat category, nihilistic violent extremists. One official told Klippenstein, quote, they are cynically targeting trans people because the shooter's lover was trans. The administration has convinced itself that the Charlie Kirk murder exposes some dark conspiracy. Trump's far-right allies have been agitating against trans people for years and see the Kirk shooting as their opportunity to escalate the campaign. In recent days, the White House counter-terror czar, Sebastian Gorka, the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., the president's boosters in right-wing media, including Laura Loomer, Matt Walsh, and Benny Johnson, have all been posting about, quote, trans violence. It's very obvious where this is headed, and since the opposition party in Washington won't do a damn thing about it, we're going to have to protect ourselves. And finally, there's another allegation of corruption against the White House that makes even the most sensationalized accusations about the Biden administration look like a jaywalking ticket. The New York Times highlighted 2 suspiciously timed deals the administration made that netted the Trump family and allies billions of dollars and provided the UAE with a pipeline to advanced computer chips. The scheme involved Trump and his top negotiator around the world, Steve Witkoff, and Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the man who controls the Emiratis' sovereign wealth fund worth over $1 trillion. This is how the paper reported on the events. Quote, in May, Mr. Witkoff's son, Zach, announced the first of the deals at a conference in Dubai. One of Sheikh Tahnoon's investment firms would deposit $2 billion into World Liberty Financial, a cryptocurrency startup founded by the Witkoffs and Trumps. 2 weeks later, the White House agreed to allow the UAE access to hundreds of thousands of the world's most advanced and scarce computer chips, a crucial tool in the high-stakes race to dominate artificial intelligence. Many of the chips would go to G42, a sprawling technology firm controlled by Sheikh Tahnoon. The administration denied any quid pro quo here, but the Times noted several aspects of the deal that suggests they were related. Witkoff was involved in both deals. While his son was finalizing the investment agreement, Witkoff urged the White House to give the UAE access to the computer chips. He was also a senior executive in the UAE who worked both for the Sheikh's technology firm and also for the Trump and Witkoff's World Liberty Financial firm, creating a link between the two companies, as the Times described, and the 2 deals worth billions of dollars. World Liberty Financial is the same company that just released its own digital currency, which was at the time considered one of the most corrupt deals to ever come out of the White House. The entirely worthless crypto coin known as WLFI is the Trump's most successful venture ever and has netted the family billions of dollars, according to the Wall Street Journal. Coin is currently trading at about 22 cents, which is about 30% off its high, so not a great investment for everyone else. The Trump sons and Witkoff son are in business together on another venture, an exclusive social club in Washington, D.C. that's basically an elaborate scheme to sell access to members of the Trump administration. Trump was asked by a reporter this week if it was ethical for the president to be engaged in so much business related to his official duties, and somehow just asking that question sparked an international incident.
A president in office should be engaged in so much business activity.
Well, I'm really not. My kids are running the business. I'm here. You know what the activity, where are you from?
I'm from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Paul Cornyn's program.
Well, the Australians, you're hurting Australia, right? In my opinion, you are hurting Australia very much right now. And they want to get along with me. You know, your leader is coming over to see me very soon. I'm going to tell him about you. You set a very bad tone.
Yes, a very bad tone. Questioning the president about the billions his family is profiting off the White House is not allowed anymore, okay? That Australian reporter, by the way, was quickly punished by the White House and barred from attending Trump's press conference in the UK later in the week. For this week in working class history, we're headed up to Canada, 1978, for the Inco strike. This was a significant industrial action in the city of Sudbury, Ontario, among workers at the International Nickel Company of Canada, or Inco. It was triggered by the company breaking its current labor agreement to impose wage cuts and mass layoffs following a drop in the price of nickel. Inco's employees were members of the Steelworkers Union, which put them in a strong position to fight back with a strike, which was declared this week that year. 11,600 Inco workers took to the picket. One of those workers, Dave Williams, gave an interview decades later recalling the strike with Sudbury.com. He said that management dismissed the strike at the time and assumed workers would come crawling back by Christmas. But, quote, Christmas came and we told them to go to hell. The strike ended up lasting for 9 months. The nickel plant was an integral part of Sudbury, so when workers shut it down, the entire city felt the impact. A study published in 1982 in the Journal of Public Health Policy found that the factory's operations sustained jobs for 26% of Sudbury's workforce, or about 43,000 people. One noticeable impact from the strike was a drastic decline in alcohol sales as white workers tightened their belts during the shutdown. But the community overwhelmingly supported the strike and helped sustain it. In the end, Inco gave in. It agreed to a new labor contract with its workforce that included higher wages and pension increases. The settlement also created the 30 and Out program, which allowed workers to retire with full pension after 30 years with the company, no matter how old they were. The 9-month-long picket was the longest strike in Canadian history until 2009, when workers at the very same nickel company in Sudbury, but under a new name, went on a strike that lasted for a year. Thanks, as always, to the crew at Working Class History for giving us access to their archives. They're on social media with more on the Inco strike and other events that happened this week in working class history, including the end of the 1889 London dock strikes, the 1970 New Zealand general strike, and the start of the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011. We'll be back with more next week. All right, we've reached the main event of the week. Thanks for all the strong Rich Dick nominations on social media. There seemed to be a theme. All the oligarchs who control our media and are aiding the government's broad censorship campaign, like the CEOs who are firing people for not correctly mourning Charlie Kirk. And Larry Ellison, who, as we talked about last week, is trying to assemble a right-wing media empire for his family. Also, Bob Iger nominated for being the guy who ultimately decided to suspend Jimmy Kimmel. Also nominated, Nexstar CEO Perry Sook, whose company first capitulated to the FCC's threats and announced it would preempt the Kimmel Show. Sook is trying to create a TV broadcast monopoly, and he needs the FCC's approval for it. And finally, a nomination for Silicon Valley investor Mark Andreessen. who, according to reports, is part of a consortium of right-wing moguls that could take over TikTok under a deal being negotiated by the Trump administration. Not great. As Axios noted, quote, Trump-friendly billionaires are consolidating control over American media, steering legacy brands and social platforms in a new conservative direction. Yeah, any one of those billionaires, including Conehead Mark Andreessen, would make a great rich dick this week. But I went a slightly different route and chose to recognize a lapdog for the billionaires instead. This week's rich dick is Stephen A. Smith. The sports TV personality has been branching out in recent years, commenting on culture and politics. And interestingly, the more and more he does it, the worse his opinions get. Like, even worse than his sports takes. So when Smith decided to weigh in on the Jimmy Kimmel situation, safe to say it was going to be some dog shit.
My only issue with Jimmy Kimmel and this whole brouhaha he finds himself inflamed with is not that, oh my God, you can't say a joke. I am incredibly alarmed about what appears to be our First Amendment rights being attacked. This is what I do for a living. I don't like that.
Okay. Though, why do I have a feeling there's a but coming up?
But you know he's coming. And you know part of the reason why is to get back at everybody who tried to take him down. They didn't try to keep him out of the White House and that was it. They tried to throw him in prison. The man is coming. And you have to adjust accordingly. Nexstar has to adjust. All these broadcast corporations have to adjust. Madison Avenue has to adjust. Wall Street has to adjust. Corporate America has to adjust.
So what's the advice here? Bend the knee? Kimmel, by the way, is an employee of Smith's at Disney, which owns both ABC and ESPN. And instead of showing any solidarity, Stephen A. showed he's a company man. Not just a company man, a bootlicker, no matter how he tries to rationalize it.
It's the real world. I don't like it. I'm alarmed by it. I'm scared of it. But I have to march forward. As do all of you.
Yeah, when there's a rising tide of fascism in America, you gotta just go with the flow. Can't beat them? Join them. Except you can beat them still. This is a minority movement. The president is deeply unpopular, and he's crashing the economy. So, if you're already submitting to the fascists at this early stage, then you were probably leaning that way from the beginning. And it's easy for people like Stephen A. to slide into it, people who have already amassed enough wealth to secure themselves from the carnage this administration is going to inflict. Smith signed a new $100 million contract with ESPN earlier this year. And while he might not join Trump's ICE Gestapo himself, like failed Superman Dean Cain, at some point, capitulation, or even just silence, makes you complicit. On Thursday, FCC Chair Brendan Carr, who used his authority to threaten the licenses of broadcasters if they don't move against Kimmel, suggested that The View could be next. And if he can take bland, liberal programming like The View off air, then no one is safe. Not even you, Stephen A. Trump himself ranted on Air Force One Thursday about how broadcasters should lose their licenses if they air shows that criticize him. I picked Stephen A. this week because he's also emblematic of this trend. corporate America is already submitting to the president's authoritarian demands, despite his unpopularity. It's as though members of the ruling class, like Stephen A., know deep down public opinion doesn't matter anymore. This is Trump's world now, and they're all okay with that. Not surprising, I guess. There's long been synergy between capitalists and fascists. I mean, that is a critical part of fascism. And often you don't know who the fascists are until they're in power. I do think there's something else motivating Smith here beyond cowardice or reactionary leanings, and that's ambition. While most of us see the censoring of Kimmel as a sign of more extremely bad things ahead, Smith sees an opportunity. He's made it known publicly for years that he wants to replace Kimmel as the host of ABC's late night show. And the way that Stephen A. ended his rant on Thursday suggests he still wants the seat.
Part of winning the game is knowing the game you're playing and adjusting accordingly to ensure that when all is said and done, you come out on top.
You hear that, Bob Iger? Are you listening, Donald Trump? If you're looking for a sycophant who will flatter you on late night TV, Stephen A. Smith is auditioning for the job. And that's why he's this week's Rich Dick. Okay, gang, the show ends today with a sunrise from Colorado. It was sent in by Chris from Pruitt Reservoir in between Fort Morgan and Sterling. Enjoy. Thank you, Chris. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. Till then, we'll be right here. See you next week.